Hello and welcome to this episode of A House in France, recorded on Wednesday, the 12th of January 2011. Very happy New Year to everybody. I'm joined as always by my co-host Lloyd. Good morning to you, Lloyd.
Bonjour and welcome. Good news from the construction side from France, or rather the good news is actually that the architect for historic monuments of France has passed the planning. So they're now just waiting for the what they call the DDE to pass the details on to the mayor's office for the final stamp of approval, and of course the mayor has the final word.
Oh, well, that's good. So what does the historic buildings department need to get involved? Because you're building a new house, right?
That's right. Yeah, essentially it's due to on the actual village itself, so everything is kept in this was some sort of it's a bit like over here where we have sort of planning restrictions. If you've got like a listed building or something like that, so we would have it, but they have more restrictions on new build sort of design and layout, etc.
Okay, all right. Well, it's good to hear that you've got some progress. I asked you the last few weeks what's happening, and it's always been nothing. So hopefully you'll be building soon, or instructing the builders to get on with it. So that'll be great. So with a new year upon us, this is a good time to start looking at your plans for house hunting. If you're looking at buying a house, if you haven't already bought one yet in France, the season really kicks off in France at Easter, a bit like it does in the UK. And a lot of properties come on the market at Easter. But actually, it's a good idea to do some house hunting earlier in the year, and January, February and March are a great time to do that for a couple of reasons. One is that there may be properties, or there will be properties that have been on the market since last year that haven't sold yet, and people might be sort of getting desperate to sell them, as there might be some opportunity for negotiation on price. And the other point, which is also very important, is that you'll get to know the estate agents, and if they really understand what your requirements are, when new properties come on the market, or in the spring, they might think this is an ideal property for you, and you might be the first person to hear about it. So developing those relationships with an estate agent is pretty important. We made several trips to France to find our place. What about you, Lloyd? I think you made 2 or 3, or maybe more than that.
Yeah, we made 3 pretty much specific trips, although we've been to France quite a few times beforehand. We kind of the last and main holiday, we spent part of the holiday in the area we were looking at for the property. Secondly, I went with my brother as a trip out there. His French is far better than mine, so it was a bit easier from that point of view. And essentially, the last trip we had, I took my partner Bev with, and she kind of like gave the stamp of approval on what we were looking at.
That's very important, right?
Absolutely.
You were very brave to do any trips on your own, I think, with your brother. By now, if you're looking to buy a house, you'll know the area. Now, Lloyd mentioned that he'd looked at some houses on holiday. We did that as well, and we found the estate agents realised you were on holiday and weren't particularly responsive. To book a specific trip and to book an appointment ahead of time with an estate agent, I think it sends the right signals to that agent. So you know the area. Doing research is very important. The internet is a great tool, as in a lot of things, to be able to research, to look at prices of property, to get an idea of the type of properties that are available. And that will, give you a good footing to get out there. Visits. Lloyd said he'd made I think 3. We made 3 or 4 visits, and you do need to invest the time in doing it. Now, we found several properties on the internet that we were interested in, and unfortunately, when we got there, they didn't live up to the what we had seen. And they looked perfect on the internet. But you really have to be there, don't you, Lloyd, to get a feeling for the place. But what that did do is it gave us a very good. First of all, we arranged appointments to see those houses the day we arrived in France on that particular trip, and then it gave us a good sort of foundation for looking at other properties because we had an idea of the prices in the area. Now, most people buy a property through estate agents, but there are a couple of ways that property is sold, Lloyd, right?
Yeah, property is sold in one of two ways generally in France. Privately through the what they call the notaire. It's kind of like a cross between a solicitor and an agent, but he has a lot more power than he'll be over here, or just via the estate agent. The vast majority is sold via agents. Using an agent is that you're likely to find someone who speaks English, and we were fortunate in that the last two agents we used were actually English, which made things a little easier for us.
Yeah, having English speaking, if your French isn't that good, is a big advantage. You're breaking up a little bit there, Lloyd, but I think you're back with us now. I managed to follow what you were saying. Those people who are watching will probably realise that we're using Skype to join Lloyd into us, and Skype does vary in its quality at times. So apologies for Lloyd's frozen face. So plan a visit, or plan several visits, and arrange to see a couple of estate agents on day one. And a lot of them have books, so it's moving to computer screens, but we visited several that brought out a huge book, this sort of thick, and you just sit there and flick through it and look at all the properties. We carefully explained what our criteria were. Our main thing was we wanted somewhere that was tranquil, so when they then took us to a house on a main road, we just said no, you didn't listen to us. So it's very important that the agents understand exactly what you're looking for. They will then arrange to take you to properties. Unlike the UK, it is very rare, extremely rare, that they'll say, well, here's the address, go and drive by it. They will insist on taking you there, and you won't know where the property is exactly until you actually get there.
Yeah, you normally also have to ask. You're asked to sign what they call a bon de visite, which basically is a document which confirms that the vendor is the agent that showed you around that particular property. It stops agents fighting over who showed who what property before they buy it. Obviously, they work on commission, so it's in their interest, shall we say.
Absolutely. And they are very secretive about their property they have in their books, and hence the reason they won't give you addresses, etc. Now, if you're organised, you can see 4, 5, maybe 6 properties in a day. So we spent 3 or 4 weeks looking at properties. We saw over 70, I think, while we were looking. Now, one of the problems with doing that, if you're out there, looking at lots of properties, is they all start merging into one. So it's pretty important that you find ways of remembering which property was which.
Yeah, the other difficulty we had was when you go look at a property which is described as a 3-bedroom. The third bedroom is somewhat not a bedroom as we would call it. The other thing also is when you're looking at properties, it's important to keep a record. Take a camera. If you've got more than GPS, even better. Take notes. Another good idea is to create a list and complete more for each property you visit, so you can tick things off as you go along. Otherwise, properties do all merge into one after a few days. Take a tape measure, torch, always handy, especially if you've got to go and look in a loft somewhere. And don't forget the essentials: pen, paper, and pad.
Yeah, I mean, I remember saying that this property has definitely got this feature, and then you would go back through the photos to check, and frequently we'd got things muddled up. So the camera was a real saver for us, and allowed us to remind ourselves of what was in each property. Now, while that only you know whether a property is right for you. You might not have the time to go and look at lots of properties. So there is another way of finding a property, and that's to employ a buyer's agent. What they do is they'll take all your criteria, and they have developed relationships with the estate agents, and they'll talk to them. They'll also tour the area that you're interested in, and they'll come up with a short list of properties and arrange for you to visit, and they'll probably accompany you maybe to see the 3 or 4 on the short list in one day. Now obviously you have to pay for this type of service, but it is a very good way of narrowing the search down, and it probably avoids you having to look at the properties, on the main road when you want something quiet, or property with lots of land when you don't want any land, etc., etc., etc. So do consider that as another option, and we'll have some links to places you can find details of buyers agents in the show notes.
One thing Mark just touched upon there was the land with the property. Do be aware that some places that are advertised property with a garden, the garden can be attached, i.e. down the road, so just watch out for that one. Each day also review all the properties, and even if there isn't one that sticks out, that you can identify what aspects belong to what property, just helps you in tuning your buying criteria. How many properties did you look at in the end, Mark?
Oh, as I said, 70 to 100 or something. It was an awful lot. But the key thing is, you have to make your own decision. You have to be happy with it. So how did you decide, Lloyd, that the particular property? I mean, you looked at eight or nine and 2 or 3 pieces of land.
Yeah, basically, we spent, as I said beforehand, lots of time going through the internet. We picked up magazines while we were on holiday, property papers, all that sort of stuff. You can pick up outside the estate agents. I think we actually viewed about 8 properties and 3 plots of land. Okay.
So it is a personal decision. I mean, our decision made on our property was it was, I think, probably 75% gut feel and 25% based on the house, and we saw that it had potential, and that's why we went with it. Right, so hopefully that information has been useful to you. I'm going to look at a website now, which is one of the websites that I used a lot, and that website is FrenchEntrée.com, and it's probably one of the biggest UK-based websites for looking at properties in France. I'm just going to quickly show you that it has a section on French property, and if you look at that, it has a buying guide, property for sale. And obviously, this is a commercial operation, so you need to appreciate that. But they do have a lot of information that can help you, and perhaps make some contacts. There also is a Living in France section, which is a lot of information on education, renovation, various guides, etc. And probably the most interesting and useful bit for us has actually been the forums. They actually have some forum where you can ask questions and talk to others, do a search. Obviously, like on any forum, do a search before you ask a question. But that's a great source of information. So I would recommend having a look at FrenchEntrée.com if you haven't done that already. Right, that's it for this episode. I hope you found it useful. Do send us any questions or comments to ahif@ttfn.tv. We'd be happy to try and answer your questions or include items that you want us to cover in future episodes. So it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me. A bientôt.
We'll see you.